Metaphors. We use them every day in our lives, right? Maybe figure of speech. It could be used in our writing, such as fiction, and also just everyday conversation. Even artists they we listen to on the radio or in a podcast or whatever we watch them. They also use metaphors to get their point across, to describe their words and or the works, and also to make sure that we, as an audience, understand what they're expressing to us. Because no one can understand the message unless we deliver it in a way that you, the people, can understand it. I just want to speak on, or really want to share, what a metaphor is based on the dictionary, not just my words. Metaphor is a figure of speech in which a word or phrase literally denoting one kind of object or idea is used in place of another to suggest a likeness or analogy between them, as in drowning in money. It is broadly used as figurative language. You can compare that with a simile, which uses the words like or as. A second definition is an object, activity, or idea treated as a metaphor, along with the symbols, and that's about it. I wanted to share that with you because when it comes to writing metaphors, it is that idea that we are sharing with the audience and hoping that you will get it. For example, in my story, Storm over South Central, which is the title story of the book named the same, Storm over South Central, there was a cloud of blood that hovers over the community. And if you know the history in the 80s and early 90s of South Los Angeles, you knew exactly what took place here. Now, I would suggest that that cloud of blood may represent one thing. And in fact, the cloud grows in size, and well, I'll let you folks get your hands on that story, get your hands on the book, and you can finish the story, come up with your own idea what that cloud represents. But I would say that that is a metaphor for what occurred in the 80s, 90s, and all the reasons for the movies and the music and everything else that took place in that time period. Much like Mr. Rod Serling in The Twilight Zone. And there are two examples I want to share with you. The first one was a 1964 episode in which a man who was due to be executed in the daytime, he and the townspeople find that it had turned night quickly, just like that. It is evening, it's darkness all around. And as the town people were so into the execution, they wanted this person murdered. They wanted him dead, according to the law and what the townspeople wanted. Even though there are a few townspeople who pushed back on and say, wait a minute, this is not what we are looking for. The man is executed, but the townspeople suddenly realize that there's darkness all around their town, and eventually, at the end of that story, it has spread past the town in ways that you would not even imagine. And it all due to certain occurrences and certain situations that happened in 1964 or before. The second example is something that I shared with everyone before, maybe not on this channel, but another channel. A classic episode, which is back in 1960 on the same show, The Twilight Zone. The monsters are due on Maple Street. You remember, right? Maple Street represents a 1950s quiet town in which the way of life is everyone knows each other, It's peaceful. It's a kind of a Midwestern American town in which everyone gets along. You know, when America was great in some people's eyes, right? Suddenly, an outside force comes to disturb that way of life. Traffic lights flicker on and off without explanation. Telephones ring. One light's on the neighbor's house, it's off in another neighbor's house, and then you suddenly have neighbor mistrusting neighbor and tearing each other apart. Meanwhile, the forces who caused this in the first place, they're the ones who suddenly understand that their plan has worked, and all it takes is a matter of time. Mr. Serling used that metaphor to say even a peaceful town in which Maple Street is based can be disrupted by an outside force. So metaphors are used to educate us. They're used to show us exactly what could go wrong in a certain type of way. But it's also used to show us what can go right. Like, for example, in the everyday language, we can say that that new hamburger place right down the street, their hamburgers were like Nirvana. Oh, yeah. Their fries are like gold. You can see the metaphors used there. Nirvana. I mean, it wasn't exactly Nirvana, but when you took a bite of hamburger, that's what it tasted like to the person eating it. Or the French fries that the person was eating tasted like gold, right? They're not exactly eating gold, but they're eating the French fries, and the taste was so pleasing to them that it was like the highest thing they could eat. It was pleasurable to their mouths, their tongues. So metaphor is used in many different ways. Again, in the examples I showed you, my story and Mr. Serling's stories, it can be used to help educate the public or to help bring conscious awareness to the public, more of a social commentary. Or in the burger joint I shared with you, is also metaphors are also used as something pleasurable that you can't describe it any other way but that. Which turns me to last night's Super Bowl. If you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, you are flying high, right? Fly, Eagles, fly. You're flying high. And you're a member of Chiefs Kingdom, you feel like you're under the earth right now. You see the two metaphors I use for Eagles fans, for Chiefs fans? It's common usage, everyday language. We use it. It's figurative, but it gives you an idea of how the fan bases are feeling today. Philadelphia and those surrounding areas in Pennsylvania are feeling that they're on top of the world right now, that they cannot be defeated, that they are the champions, which they are. And meanwhile, the Kansas City Chiefs, which for 2 years running felt the same exact way, now feel the lowest of the low. They feel under the planet. They feel like they've been ejected to outer space. Not exactly in outer space, but again, I use a simile instead of a metaphor, using the word like. But based on when any city wins a championship, you do feel like the top of the world, and that's what the metaphor is. It's a happy feeling. It feels as if you're great. Nothing can hurt your day or ruin your day because you are a fan of that team that won a championship. I should know. But that's exactly what the metaphors are. So I would say this: if you are a first-time writer, learn to study metaphors. Use them in your writing. Use them to help develop situations and ideas to speak of a larger meaning, right? use them to educate the public, but at the same time, use them to educate the world that you live in so that we all get an idea of where you are. Because if you try to share exactly where you live or how you're living, we won't get it unless you use a metaphor to describe how you are, to describe your way of life, to describe the area that you live in, the town, the life that you live. If you want to do that in your writing, use a metaphor. Throw in maybe a couple to show us exactly how you're living. For example, Storm Over South Central was my response to living in South LA in the 80s and 90s and having to hear about the gun violence, the drug deaths, all of the media attention on this wider community and young people my age, or depending if they're younger or older, even babies, facing certain death every single day. And the way that I can reach the audience of that time is to write about a cloud of blood or a storm of blood and the effect it has on the community and the community at large. The same way that Mr. Sterling in The Twilight Zone uses metaphors to show us that fear can kill and that hate can black us all out. So I just hope that the use of metaphors will help you in understanding to become a better writer, but also in our everyday language, how metaphors used to help us communicate with one another and to help get us closer together, I guess, in terms of telling our stories, in terms of saying, describing our world around us, or even our neighborhood, places, or even ourselves. When I talk about that burger place and how they make you feel. So I just hope in your writing, if you're a beginning writer, that you start to use metaphors, to do your research on them, and then just try it to apply them in your everyday life. Or if you happen to say them and you recognize it, write it down or type it out, and then you have a folder of metaphors so that when you want to use them in your writing, you'll be able to use it and not just on the top of your head. Excuse me. Must have been something I ate. Well, we want to thank each and every one of you for your time sharing with me. I hope that I said something to help educate you. I hope I said something to help get your interest in the metaphors and use my examples. But again, if you're a beginning writer, use them as a tool to help you with your writing. But if you're not a writer, I hope that you understand that we use this in everyday language and that they're abound. And even though Kendrick used his metaphors last night in his halftime show, which people are commenting still, even to this day, even to right now, I would like to say that metaphors are always a part of our lives and not just limited to artists. With that being said, I wish you all the best. Have a good week wherever you are. But more importantly, have a good day, evening, and wherever you are, please watch yourself. As always, in closing, take care.